If Earth suddenly became flat, the entire structure of the planet would transform into a vast, disc-like surface with no curvature, no poles, and no spherical center. Instead of continents spread evenly around a globe, everything would exist on a single gigantic plane. The center of this plane would become the most stable region, while the outer areas would be unstable, dangerous, and drastically different from anything we know. The thickness of the flat Earth would also become a major question, whether it is only a few hundred kilometers thick or thousands, but either way, its ends would create a new and mysterious geological boundary. Gravity would behave in a completely different way. On our real spherical planet, gravity pulls everything toward the center of the Earth, giving all people the same downward force. But on a flat Earth, gravity would not be uniform. It would still pull toward the center of mass, meaning objects and people near the center of the disk would feel normal downward gravity, but those near the edges would feel gravity pulling at an angle, almost sideways. As a result, oceans, rivers, and lakes would not stay in their natural places. All water would gradually flow toward the middle of the disk, creating a massive superocean at the center and leaving the edges almost completely dry and barren. The atmosphere would also become unstable. Without the round shape to hold it evenly, air would be thickest near the center and extremely thin near the edges. Heavy winds would constantly push outward, and the outer regions might have almost no breathable air. Storms would become chaotic, drifting unpredictably across the flat surface. Rainfall patterns would break down, and entire climates could shift in days instead of decades. Sunlight would behave differently as well. Without a rotating sphere, day and night cycles would be uneven. Some regions would experience long, harsh days, while others might remain in darkness for extended periods. The familiar rhythm of sunrise and sunset would vanish, replaced by unpredictable patches of light and shadow across the disk. Seasons would collapse completely, transforming Earth into an unstable and unpredictable world. Life for humans would change drastically if Earth became flat. The first and most immediate challenge would be survival in a world where gravity, atmosphere, and sunlight are no longer stable. People living near the center of the flat Earth would experience the most normal conditions with relatively balanced gravity and air pressure. However, those living toward the outer regions would face severe challenges. Gravity pulling sideways would make simply walking feel like climbing a steep hill. Breathing would be difficult because the atmosphere would thin rapidly the farther one moved from the center. As a result, human populations would naturally migrate toward the middle, creating extreme crowding and competition for resources. Cities and infrastructure would need to be redesigned entirely. Buildings near the edges could not stand upright because gravity would constantly pull them toward the center of the disk. Skyscrapers, bridges, and tall structures would collapse unless engineered at strange angles to counter gravity's sideways pull. Water systems would also break down because rivers would refuse to flow outward. Instead, all water would drain toward the middle of the flat Earth. This would leave many regions without fresh water while flooding central territories. Engineers would be forced to invent new gravity-resistant designs for transportation, energy systems, and even simple roads. Technology would face even bigger disruptions. Satellites, which depend on orbiting a spherical Earth, would no longer be possible. GPS navigation, global communication networks, weather forecasting, and satellite internet would disappear overnight. Air travel would become dangerous because the atmosphere would be uneven and turbulent. Airplanes might struggle to take off in thin air near the edges, and unpredictable wind patterns would make flying nearly impossible. Scientific principles like projectile motion, energy distribution, and climate modeling would all have to be rewritten from scratch. Human society would change on a cultural level as well. Economies would collapse in areas near the edges, creating massive migrations toward the center. Nations might wage wars over central territories where conditions are safest. Myths and fears about the outer edges, whether they drop into space or end in an unknown barrier, would shape religion, storytelling, and cultural beliefs. In the end, life on a flat Earth would be chaotic, uneven, and filled with constant struggle to adapt to a world that no longer follows the rules of physics as we know them. If Earth became flat, the effects would reach far beyond the surface. Space itself would become chaotic. Our current solar system depends on stable gravitational interactions between spherical planets. A flat Earth, however, would not create the same gravitational pull. Instead of drawing objects toward a central core, its gravity would be uneven and spread across a wide, thin disk. This instability would disrupt the orbit of the Moon, the path of the Sun, and even the balance of other planets. The Moon might drift unpredictably, move to close, or break away entirely. Without a stable orbit, its phases, tides, and eclipses would behave erratically, throwing Earth's natural cycles into complete disorder. The Sun's motion would also change dramatically. Instead of rising and setting across a curved, rotating planet, it would have to move in a circular pattern above the disk to create areas of light and darkness. But even then, sunlight would fall unevenly. Regions near the center might receive intense, constant daylight, while those near the edges could remain in long-term shadow. Shadows would stretch in unnatural directions, and simple things like telling time from the sun would be nearly impossible. The uneven heating of the flat surface would create violent winds, extreme temperatures, and unpredictable climate zones that shift rapidly. Physics itself would begin to break down. Earth's magnetic field, generated by the spinning molten core of a spherical planet, would collapse on a flat Earth. Without this protective shield, cosmic radiation would bombard the surface, damaging electronics, harming living organisms, and igniting unpredictable atmospheric reactions. Compasses would stop working, navigation would fail, and auroras would vanish completely. The tectonic system responsible for mountains, earthquakes, and volcanoes would also fail because it relies on a spherical structure. Over time, the flat Earth might crack under uneven pressure or fold in on itself. Long-term stability would be impossible. Without strong, centralized gravity, the atmosphere would gradually drift into space, oceans would drain toward the center, and the outer edges might crumble under cosmic forces. In the end, a flat Earth could not survive as a stable celestial body. The universe itself would reshape or destroy it, turning the planet into a fragile, unstable disk unable to sustain life.